Good evening, everybody, and thank you for being with us. It's going to be quite a broadcast because it's been quite a news day. Senator Harry Reid taking ownership of a government shutdown when he issued an ultimatum to House Republicans today. And President Obama has escalated his rhetoric of fear on the prospects of a government shutdown, the president holding an impromptu, unscheduled press conference to deliver that ultimatum, seemingly trying to scare as many people as possible, predominantly Republicans, of course, into doing his bidding on the federal budget and Obamacare funding. It appears the president and Democratic leadership in the Senate have decided to shut the government down. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid confirmed just moments ago exactly that on the Senate floor. House Speaker John Boehner maintaining that the House will craft a new funding bill, calling it a counter-proposal, a bill that the Senate says they will summarily reject. Here is a sampling now of the president's scary phrases of the day.
Over the next 3 days, House Republicans will have to decide whether to join the Senate and keep the government open or shut it down because they can't get their way. So to any Republican in Congress who's currently watching, I'd encourage you to think about who you're hurting. There are probably young people in your office right now who came to work for you without much pay because they believed that public service was noble. You're preparing to send them home without a paycheck. You've got families with kids back in your districts who serve their country in the federal government. And now they might have to plan how they're going to get by if you shut the government down.
But while the president emphasizes he will not talk with Republicans, he did today speak with Iranian President Hassan Rouhani, just hours after Iranian state media quoted Ayatollah Khamenei's top military advisor declaring victory over President Obama and the United States for our willingness to negotiate with Rouhani and Iran. Here is President Obama.
Just now, I spoke on the phone with President Rouhani of the Islamic Republic of Iran. The two of us discussed our ongoing efforts to reach an agreement over Iran's nuclear program. I reiterated to President Rouhani what I said in New York. While there will surely be important obstacles to moving forward, and success is by no means guaranteed, I believe we can reach a comprehensive solution.
The Obama-Rouhani telephone conversation was the first contact between leaders of the two nations in 3 decades. Also, an unexpected development in the Nairobi Mall terrorist attack. These are newly released images from inside the Kenyan Mall terrorist attack showing the massive structural damage during that siege. 3 floors of the indoor parking garage collapsed, trapping as many as 60 hostages in the rubble. A top Kenyan government official today also acknowledged that much of that damage in the mall and the collapse of the 3-story parking garage were the result of the military's use of rocket-propelled grenades within the mall, opening up a gaping hole in the roof, taking down large columns, leading to the collapse. And in Boston, a young man oblivious to his surroundings, stumbling directly onto the train tracks in a Boston commuter train station, the man falling directly onto the tracks in front of dozens of other passengers. We'll have the story of what happens next for you here later in the broadcast. What would you have done? And coming up here in moments with a unique and special perspective into a government shutdown, former House Majority Leader Tom DeLay joins us. He helped guide the Republican Party during the 1995-96 showdowns with President Bill Clinton. He joins us with some counsel for Republicans in both houses of Congress. And the prospect of that shutdown now is our lead story. The president and Senator Harry Reid chose to shut down the government rather than negotiate, apparently, with House Republicans. The Senate stripped out the Obamacare defunding language in the House, passed continuing resolution earlier in the day. They sent the bill back to the House with just 3 days before a deadline to fund the government. President Obama called an impromptu news conference moments later to demand Republicans do what he says or else to fund the law opposed by the majority of Americans 52% opposed, according to today's Real Clear Politics average of the 6 most recent surveys. And Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid himself perhaps making a critical political mistake by delivering this point-blank ultimatum to House Speaker Boehner and declaring that he is willing to shut down the government.
The Senate will be back in session on Monday. In the meantime, if Speaker Boehner wants to avoid a government shutdown, he will pass our resolution. Otherwise, it's a government shutdown.
I believe that's what they call blunt force. President Obama and both parties have manufactured a political conflict, and both parties bear great responsibility over the issue of Obamacare, its funding, and government spending that may have serious consequences for both Democrats and Republicans. President Obama is resorting once again to an ultimatum, this time to Speaker John Boehner and House Republicans, a president for whom of late ultimatums have been largely unproductive, to put it in the kindest sense. Fox News Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel with our report.
Lou, by a party line vote, the Senate has sent to the House a stopgap funding bill that also provides money for the president's health care law.
But I would ask my colleagues, before they vote yes on this important amendment, do you really want to be responsible for killing more jobs?
The yeas are 54, the nays are 44.
Democrats succeeded in placing Obamacare money back into the stopgap funding bill. Even before voting began, Texas conservative Ted Cruz looked ahead to the next confrontation.
The good news is the process isn't over. It's going to go back to the House of Representatives. And I salute the House for having had the courage to stand up and fight and defund Obamacare.
The Senate Majority Leader took aim at Cruz and his allies.
These extremists are more interested in putting on a show, as one Republican colleague put it, than in legislating.
Senate GOP Leader Mitch McConnell said all Republicans agree the health care law must go.
It all adds up to just one thing: a law in trouble, a law that needs to be repealed. That's the goal of every member of the Republican conference here in the Senate.
The president appeared in the White House briefing room and drew a map for the Congress.
The United States Senate, Democrats and Republicans, acted responsibly by voting to keep our government open and delivering the services the American people expect. Now it's up to the Republicans in the House of Representatives to do the same.
In the House, the next play won't come until Speaker John Boehner and his leadership team meet with GOP members tomorrow. It's believed the House is leaning toward voting on a continuing resolution that would delay Obamacare a year or remove the congressional exemption, but the calendar may start to become a factor. Yesterday, the Speaker wasn't showing his cards.
We're not going to have a discussion about the CR and speculate about the CR until the Senate finishes their bill.
Today, House Democratic Leader Nancy Pelosi accused the Tea Party loyalists of being at war with the government.
This is silly. This is maybe they didn't get some orientation on how serious the work is that we do here.
Florida Republican Senator Marco Rubio says the GOP doesn't want to shut down the government. They're trying to protect real people.
And the reason why I want to shut down Obamacare is because of the harm it's doing to the American middle class, to hard-working people who get up in the morning and are working hard just to try to get ahead.
Adding to the tension here, Senator Reid has announced the Senate won't return until 2 p.m. on Monday, just hours before a possible government shutdown, trying to say to the House it is the Senate bill or else. Lou?
Mike, thank you. Mike Emanuel. Joining me now to discuss what is a building budget battle, Congressman Randy Forbes, member of the House Judiciary and Armed Services Committee. Congressman, good to have you with us. What is, in your judgment, the prospect of a government shutdown as we stand right now?
Well, Lou, if you listen to the president, you listen to Senator Reid, it seems like both of them are prepared to shut the government down unless they get their way. I don't think Americans like bullies. I think what they've said is kind of bullying. And so I think it's a greater probability than it should be if they're not prepared to sit down at a table and negotiate. And what for the Republicans here is negotiable? Is it in prospect to move aside the issue of defunding Obamacare, to simply defer for a year the implementation of the individual mandate? Everybody take a deep breath here and try to deal with the many failings of this law. Well, Lou, I think that is a possibility, but I would posture this totally different than what our leadership has done so far. Whether we have the fight on the CR or on the debt ceiling, we need to have the fight, but I would do it a little differently. What I would do is put a conference table in the Rayburn room, which, as you know, is right off of the House floor. I'd put the leadership names from every leader in the Senate and from the House on the other side and the President at the end, and I would invite them all to come to the table. And then if I were Speaker Boehner, I'd walk in at 9 o'clock in the morning. If they weren't there, I'd tell all the press we'll be back at noon, come back at noon, and then 5 so the American people can see they're not there negotiating. If they did show up, this is what I would do, Lou. We have 12 appropriations bills. I would do a CR for all of them except the one that funds the Internal Revenue Service. And I would withhold funding on the Internal Revenue Service until they remove the Internal Revenue Service from the health care bill. I think the American people would support that, would understand that. They would see that this administration is willing to shut down the government to protect the IRS. And if we went on that provision, it would crumble the health care bill. That's the fight that I would be making right now if I were the Speaker.
And without funding of the Internal Revenue Service, the effect would be what on Obamacare itself?
Obamacare cannot function unless they have the Internal Revenue Service actually running this and monitoring all of these premiums and overseeing much of this health care law. If you pull out the IRS portion of it, this bill will crumble of its own weight. I think that would be a fight worth having, and I'd love to hear them debate over the next several days and months why they want to shut the government down and protect the Internal Revenue Service and giving them this broad power and all these additional agents to monitor our health care system in the United States.
Well, Congressman, you hardly need my reaction, but I would say this of your proposal. It is nice to hear fresh and original thinking about an important issue like this, and I would hope, certainly, that the leadership, that is Speaker Boehner, and the leaders of the Republican Party in the House would listen to you very carefully and with the idea that it's an idea worth trying. Almost anything, it seems, would be better than to just continue the collision without effect. Do you think...
Well, Lou, we plan...
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, not at all. Go ahead.
Lou, I plan to present it to the conference tomorrow at noon. The wonderful thing about it is then the American people really get to see the facts. That it's not filtered through editorial board writers and talking heads on TV. Every TV camera in America, as you know, would be focused right in on that conference room and on the debate that took place there, and they could see for themselves who was being reasonable and who wasn't.
Are you surprised that Senator Reid stepped to the forefront and declared that it's either his way, that is the Senate legislation, or shut down the government? Does that not give him ownership? I don't know if any Republicans have been calling for the shutdown or threatening the shutdown per se, other than now the strong voice of the Senate Majority Leader, Harry Reid.
Lou, I haven't heard any Republican that wants to shut the government down, and I haven't heard any of them say it has to be their way or the highway, like Senator Reid said today. And again, one of the big concerns for us, you've heard it echoed by many people today, but you have a president that calls a press conference. He brags about the fact that he's prepared to negotiate with Iran, negotiate with Syria, negotiate with Russia, but he will not negotiate with the Republicans who hold a majority of the districts in the House of Representatives elected by the people in this country. I just don't think the American people like that kind of bullying, and I think it's going to backfire on Senator Reid and the President.
Congressman Randy Forbes, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Lou.
Thank you. We'll have much more on the Republican move by in the House throughout tonight's broadcast. Stay with us. We're coming right back.